Welcome to section 2.4. We are going to be writing equations of lines in this section instead of just graphing whatever equations they gave us. Now you'll notice I have 2 extra examples than what are actually in your notes, so please at this moment in time grab an extra sheet of paper because these are questions that you'll want to talk about in general to get the idea before we look at some of the more difficult. Now, there are 2 equations we need to know. The first one is y-intercept form or slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And again, you know that is slope-intercept. The second one is called point slope, where we do y minus a y value equals the slope times x minus an x value. And again, we are going to call this point slope. Now, through these 2, I'm going to show you both. However, I'm going to tell you that I tend to use point slope more because then it will give me the equation at the end instead of having to plug things back in. But again, this is a choice that you can make. So here's what we have first. In order to find an equation, I need to have both m and b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Okay, so in the first example, I give you the slope. That's a bonus. What I don't have, though, is the y-intercept. So what I'm going to do first is use the slope-intercept form to show you how that works. Now, if I have this general equation, y equals mx plus b, what I'm going to do, they give me an x and a y value coordinate point, and I'm going to plug that in with a slope of b, or a slope of m to find b. So I plug this in. 1 equals, my slope is 2 times 2 is x plus b. So I have 1 equals 4 plus b. And in order to solve for b, I subtract 4. Therefore, b is negative 3. So I take now my b and my slope and I put it back into my equation. So my equation is y equals 2x minus 3. Okay, this should be something that you have done in geometry, but I just want to make sure that we're okay with how it looks. What I want to show you an example too, though, is this new point slope, which may not be something you used in geometry. Now, I still need 2 things. I still need a slope and a y-intercept. Okay, I still need those 2 things. So that's what I'm going to find first. They don't give me a slope, but I know with my 2 points, I can find a slope. So I take negative 2 minus 2 over 3 minus 6. So I have negative 4 over negative 3, which a negative divided by a negative makes a positive 4/3. Now, instead of taking this slope and a point and plugging it back into mx plus b like we did above, I'm going to plug it into point slope. And I'm going to pick this point because they're all positive. Now, you can pick either point. You should get the same answer. But here's what happens when I plug it in. I take y minus the y value, which is 2, equals my slope of 4/3 times x minus my x value of 6. And you'll notice I'm still left with an x and a y, which is going to give me the equation that I need. So here's how it works. I take the 4/3 and I distribute. So I get y minus 2 equals 4/3 x minus, now 4 times 6 is 24, and 24 divided by 3 is negative 8, okay, or minus 8. Now I'm going to solve for y, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and now y equals 4/3 x minus 6. And this is now our equation. Now, what's the difference? Well, I've got a little bit more algebra here, but I didn't have to take a b and take an m and plug it into the equation. All I had to do was put in the right numbers and it gave me the equation. So those are kind of choices that you have going through, but I at least wanted to give you one look at each one. Now, note for quiz and test, as we're going through, you're going to be asked to do 3 different types of general equations. General equations. First one is given a slope and a y-intercept, just write the equation. That should be easy. Second one, we're going to give you a slope and a point, like we just did in example 1. And the third type, we're just going to give you 2 points, and we're going to ask you to write the equation like we did in example 2. So those are the 3 types that you will have to do when we're just talking about general equations. Now I want you to look at your notes, and we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular, since we covered those as slope in 2-2. Now let's talk about parallel and perpendicular. This is giving us back to section 2-2, where we're talking about what slope we need. If it is parallel, we want the same slope. Okay? So that means if I'm given an equation, all I want from this equation is the slope. And in this case, the slope is -4. Because it's parallel, I'm keeping the -4. So I know that my slope is -4, and I have this point, -2,3. Given what we did before, all I'm going to do is plug it in, and I'm going to use point slope again. So I take y minus the y value that they give you at 3 equals my slope of -4 times x minus -2. Well, subtracting a negative means +2. Once I set it up, I just simply do some algebra. So y minus 3 equals -4x, and -4 and 2 is -8. To get rid of the 3, I add it. So I get y equals -4x minus 5. And how do I know that these two are parallel? Because the slopes are identical. Okay, so keep in mind, again, you want to look at, are they parallel? Well, yeah, they have the same slope. Okay, that means they're parallel. So really, it's going to be the same idea. Now, what I want you to do is check point 1 in the notes. And so take a second and pause the video. And what I want you to do is double check. If you go through 4, -2, can you get a line that's parallel to y equals 3x minus 1? And in order to get your notes point, I'm going to check that. Okay? Now pause the video because I'm going to move on to example 2. If I look at example 2, it says now perpendicular. And we know that perpendicular is an opposite reciprocal slope. Okay, so I look at my equation, -4x plus 1. I know that -4 is the original slope, so a perpendicular slope, I'm going to write this shorthand for perpendicular, I take it and make it the opposite, so a +4, and then I flip it for the reciprocal of 1/4. So it's a +1/4. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did before, and I'm going to find the equation now with -2,3 as a point and the slope of 1/4. Now this time I'm going to do it in slope-intercept form though, so that you are able to see it. Okay? I know this is the x and the y, so I say 3 equals 1/4 times -2 plus b. 1/4 times -2 is -1/2 plus b. And if I add 1/2, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to write this, but I end up getting that b is 3.5. So my equation is y equals, I need my slope again for 1/4 x plus 3.5. Now this is perfectly fine. However, I would love, instead of this mixed fraction, I would love to turn this into a single fraction. So 1/4 x plus, instead of 3.5, we look at, go back to here, 3 is the same thing as 6/2, and you'll notice they used a denominator of 2 because the 1/2 is a 2. So 6/2 plus 1/2 equals 7/2. And this is the one I'd like to see more, but I will take either of those. They're exactly the same answer. Now again, to get the notes points, I would like you to do checkpoint 2 and make sure that you can do it for a perpendicular line. So pause the video a second and actually go through and try and find the equation. If it's incorrect, we can fix it, but you need to attempt it. Once you are done, flip the page. Okay, the last example is where we start with standard form. Okay, now standard form, we said a, b, and c are integers. And so we're giving you a slope and a point, and our goal is to get back to look at something like this, where x and y are on the same side. This is one of those questions that's kind of an extension, but I need you to know how to be able to do that, especially those of you that are thinking of going to pre-calc next year. What I'm going to do is start like I normally would in slope-intercept form. I'm actually going to run through it in point slope, but similar idea. Here's what happens. Okay, so I'm going to start y minus my y value of 3 equals my slope of 4/5 times x minus 2. Now this one's going to have some fractions in it, but we're going to end up then taking it to standard form, which is fine. Now if I distribute this, I get that y minus 3 equals 4/5 x minus, and in order to multiply this, I'm going to put this over 1, because I do 4 times 2, which is 8, over 5 times 1, which is 5, so minus 8/5. Alright, to solve, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I have that y equals 4/5 x. Now, 3 is the same thing as 15/5. So negative 8/5 plus 15/5 is 7/5. And your calculator can help you with that one if you need. Now, here's what happens. We don't want fractions. We also know that we want x on the other side so that we can be in standard form. So I'm going to rewrite this one up here. 4/5 x plus 7/5. And we're going to take the idea of clearing our fractions like we did in section 1-3. If we don't want to see fractions anymore, we have to find a common denominator. Well, in this case, the denominators are both 5. So we're going to multiply everything by 5. If I take 5 times y, I get 5y. 5 times 4/5 is 4x. And 5 times 7/5 is plus 7. The only thing that's left to do now, because these are all at least integers now, is I want to put the x and the y on the same side. So I'm going to move the x over by subtracting it. So I get negative 4x and a positive 5y equals 7. This is our answer in standard form, where this is the answer in slope-intercept form. They are getting me the same line, it's just a slightly different look. Okay, now if you can get to here, the only thing that's left is to clear the fractions like we did in 1.4. So again, I'm going to ask one more time. In order to get the notes points, I want an attempt on the checkpoint 3. Okay, that's the end of the 2-4 notes. I'm going to check the checkpoints in class. We're going to talk about them, put them up on the board, see what we need help with. But all we are doing today, no graphing, anything like that, we are just trying to write equations.